Hello everyone, it's Mariners Fanatic back with another video, and today I will be going over my 2021 MLB season predictions. I'll be talking about every team and what I think their record will be. So starting off with the NL East, I have the Miami Marlins finishing in 5th place at 75 and 87. Now, I've been listening to the Chris Rose rotation, the John Boy Media podcast, and he had Miguel Rojas on this week, and I really like him. And I like the Marlins. I think their pitching staff is good, but I just don't think that offense is good enough for the full year. Last year, they had a crazy season with COVID and managed to make the playoffs and beat the Cubs, and that was fun. It was fun to watch, but I just don't think they have it. Like, I want to pick the Marlins to do better, but I don't think they will. In 4th place, I have the Philadelphia Phillies at 80 and 82. I like the Phillies. They're probably one of my favorite teams. I like Bryce Harper, Real Muto, Didi Gregorius. They have a good team, but it just doesn't seem good enough. And some of the players are older, like Andrew McCutchen. He's a great player, but he's getting up there and it's not as productive as he used to be. Their bullpen last year was, if you can believe it, worse than the Mariners bullpen, which was pretty bad. They made some adjustments there. Hopefully those can pan out. And the rotation is not bad. It's just not amazing, especially when you compare it to the rest of the NL East. So I like the Phillies, but they're still in 4th place for me. Moving to 3rd place are the Nationals. Now, the Nationals are kind of in a make or break point. They could be good, but this could be the start of them falling back in 5th place. Yes, they have Juan Soto and Trey Turner, and they still have Max Scherzer, Patrick Corbin, and hopefully Steven Strasburg can come back. So the rotation's not bad either. They brought in John Lester. They brought in some veteran guys, Kyle Schwarber. So there's a lot of potential with this team. However, if things go wrong like they did last year, it's just going to be Juan Soto and Trey Turner all year. That's why I have the Nats at 85 and 77. They could be a lot better than that or a lot worse. In second, I have the New York Mets at 90 and 72. I think the Mets are a really good team. They had one of the best off seasons out of all the MLB teams. Picked up Francisco Lindor, Carlos Carrasco, James McCann. They still have Jacob deGrom. They made a lot of great moves. I liked what they did. Honestly, I think it's better that they didn't get Trevor Bauer. They were able to pick up Taijuan Walker, which I was sad the Mariners didn't get him, but he's going to do really well in New York. You got Marcus Stroman. You still have Noah Syndergaard there. So it's going to be a good team. I'm hoping Edwin Diaz can keep doing well, and I think this team's going to be really good. In 1st place, I have the Atlanta Braves. I at 95 and 67. I'm not really sure why the PECOTA projections have them with so few wins. I think it's like 83 or something like that. This is a good team. Their rotation, had a ton of injuries last year, and they still made it to the NLCS. That lineup is potent. You got Marcell Ozuna back. Ozzie Albies will hopefully be healthy for a full season this year. You got Freddie Freeman, who just came off an MVP, Ronald Acuna, of course. You've got so many great players on that team. And the pitching is not bad at all. You've got young prospects. Mike Soroka hopefully will be back. It's a decent rotation. You just got Charlie Morton, too. So I think they're going to be a lot better than the projections have them. I still think they're a 1st place team, but the Mets are definitely going to give them a run for their money. So moving on to the NL Central. In 5th place, of course, you already know who it's going to be, the Pirates, 59 and 103. I don't think they win 60 games. They could. If they do, great for them. I don't think they're a good team. Obviously, they traded away Joe Musgrove, Jameson Taillon, and Josh Bell, among others. Those are the 3 biggest names. They're in full rebuild now. The only guy you really have to look forward to is Ke'Bryan Hayes, and Steven Brault's pretty solid. But other than that, there's not much to look forward to for the Pirates. So moving on to 4th place, I have the Reds at 81 and 81. I think the Reds are a pretty mediocre team unless they can actually live up to their potential. Last year, they were 31 and 29 and snuck into the playoffs. Trevor Bauer helped out with that factor, and they still have a solid rotation, but it's definitely not as strong losing Bauer. You've got Castillo and Gray, the top 2 there. But ultimately, I just don't think this team has enough firepower, both in the pen and that lineup has not shown that it can produce over the past year or two, even though they've had some of those guys for a few seasons. Castellanos needs to be better. Mike Moustakas needs to be better. Shogo Akiyama has to be better. Ultimately, I think they could win the division, but I just don't trust in them to do that. Next, talking about the Cubs. The Cubs are still a good team. A lot of people were ragging on them, especially after they lost to the Marlins last year. They did lose Yu Darvish, but they still have Javi Baez and Anthony Rizzo. Javi Baez is not going to have a bad season like he did last year. He may not be quite as the superstar as he was a couple years ago, but he's going to bounce back. This team's still good. If they're not doing well, they start trading guys at the deadline, they could seriously drop to fourth place and into the cellar in the 70-win range. But if they keep the core together and they're still playing well, then they're a third, second, maybe even first place team, depending on how well their pitching can do. As the pitching is not as solid as it was, especially losing Yu Darvish. Next up, I have the St. Louis Cardinals at 88 and 74. The addition of Nolan Arenado is huge. It's a great move. I love it. I love Nolan Arenado. I like the Cardinals. However, they also brought back Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina, and I like both of those moves, but they're in the very twilight of their career. Their offense, I'm not super high on. As much as I like Harrison Bader, he's not the best with the bat all the time. Tyler O'Neill needs to step it up. Overall, this team has potential to be a first place team, but the bats really have to find it, and the pitching needs to stay strong like it did last year. Jordan Hicks coming back is going to be huge. I'm excited to see him come back throwing over 100 miles an hour. But this team, it could be a first place team, but I still think they're going to be second. And from the records you see, the NL Central is going to be really tight. Anybody from the Reds to the first place team I have in the Brewers at 89 and 73 can win this division. It all depends on whether these teams can play up to their potential and stay healthy. As I mentioned, I have the Brewers at 89 and 73. I think they have a really solid pitching staff. Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, among others. Their bullpen is incredible. Obviously, you got Josh Hader and Devin Williams, among others as well. Freddie Peralta's in there. And the offense is going to bounce back. Back in January, I would have had the Brewers in like third place. But since they made the additions of Colton Wong and Jackie Bradley Jr., I think they're a first place team. Now, these aren't the biggest star names, for example, Nolan Arenado. But both of these guys are really good at defense and are good hitters. In a lineup that was fairly weak last year and struggled to barely just squeak into the playoffs. Their pitching carried them to the playoffs, not their hitting. Christian Yelich is going to bounce back. He's going to have a good year, and I think their new guys are going to produce and do really well. I think the Brewers are going to win the division. I like what their squad has. I didn't like their squad a couple months ago, but now I do. The NL Century is going to be a tight division. Next up is going to be the NL West. Unfortunately, the Rockies are going to be sitting in last place. I have them at 68 and 94. They could win even fewer games than that, depending on if they trade away German Marquez, Trevor Story, Kyle Freeland, guys like that to go into a full rebuild. Colorado management is pretty stubborn. I don't know if they're going to go through with that, but I really think they need to. Next up, I have the Giants at 74 and 88. Now, some of you might have them higher on your rankings or what you think. I really don't think the Giants are going to be that good as they were last year, making a push for that last wild card spot. They brought in a lot of veteran guys, which if they were all to hit, they could be a wild card team. However, the likelihood of all of them hitting is just not very high. Overall, when Kevin Gausman is still your ace, technically, that's not an exciting picture for the rotation. The lineup didn't improve that much. Tommy La Stella's great. They've got a prospect in Helio Ramos who's coming up who's pretty good. Brandon Belt's still there. Crawford's still there, but those are guys from the 2012-2014 World Series team. They're getting up there. They're in their twilights of their career. Buster Posey as well. And this team is just aging, and I really think they're making a mistake in not rebuilding. But maybe they're giving it one last shot, so we'll see where this goes. Next up, I have the Diamondbacks at 78 and 84. The only reason why I like this team better than the Giants is because of their rotation. I find it hard to believe that Madison Bumgarner is going to have as bad of a year as he did last year. I think he's going to bounce back. They've still got Zach Gallen, Caleb Smith, and some other guys in that rotation that are pretty solid. The bullpen is okay. They did pick up like Joaquin Soria. And the lineup is decent, but it's not amazing either. Hopefully Ketel Marte can bounce back, Christian Walker, Nick Ahmed. Hopefully they can do well still. But ultimately, I'm not as high on their lineup. Clearly, the Padres won the offseason. Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, signing Tatis to a contract extension. They made so many great moves. And I really loved how AJ Preller is just sending it again. I don't think this time it's going to bomb. Blake Snell's still in his prime. Yu Darvish is still really good. Tatis is amazing. You still have Machado. You brought back Jerkson Profar as a utility guy. Like, there's so many options on this team. It's just a really, really good team. I don't think there's enough there to take down the Dodgers, but we'll see. It's going to be a really, really fun battle this year, and I'm really excited to watch Padres-Dodgers games. Lastly, to talk about the Dodgers, obviously they're coming off a World Series, and they could do it again. Honestly, they could. Bringing in Trevor Bauer was huge. Some people didn't think they needed pitching, but I personally think they did. That starting rotation. Kershaw is still great, but he's aging. Dustin May didn't quite prove himself. Brusdar Gratterall went to the bullpen, and he's been electric there. Tony Gonsolin, pretty solid, but I don't know if you necessarily want him in the rotation if you're trying to win a World Series. Trevor Bauer was the right move for them, actually, and they got Justin Turner back. They still pretty much have their whole lineup intact. If they don't even win the division, it'll probably be a disappointment. But if they made the wild card and then still made the World Series, then people probably wouldn't complain. But they should win the division. If they don't, why did you spend $40 million on Bauer? And I know it's not all on Bauer, but ultimately it's a big signing and it's a big deal. And so I have the Dodgers winning the NL West. Moving on to the American League, I'm going to start off with the AL East. In last place, I have the Baltimore Orioles. They just signed Mikael Franco, who played with the Royals last year and had a pretty decent season. The O's are trending upwards. I still think they're going to get last place. I hope to see guys like Matt Harvey and Felix Hernandez find themselves again. That would be cool to see. But ultimately, there's just not enough there, and the AL East is going to be a tough division. In fourth, I have the Red Sox. The Red Sox could potentially surprise some people if they're healthy and some of the guys that struggled last year can make a bounce back. For example, JD Martinez struggled. Hunter Renfroe and Kike Hernandez really need to prove themselves that they're capable of not just being utility platoon guys, or even if they are, they need to excel at that platoon role. But ultimately, what it comes down to for the Red Sox is the pitching. Chris Sale's likely not going to pitch, so that's a bit of a hit for them, which is why I say they're probably still going to be fourth place. 2022 is more hopeful for them. But if everything goes well, they stay healthy, they could surprise some people. The bullpen last year was obviously a problem for them. That needs to get fixed. They didn't really make too many moves to address that, so we'll see what happens there. But I still think the Red Sox are a fourth place team, but trending in the right direction. The Rays are trending in the wrong direction. Yes, they made the World Series last year, and they're keeping most of the offense, but the pitching turnover was pretty substantial. Obviously, they lost Snell, they lost Morton. That rotation was kind of gutted in a sense. They made a lot of nice under the radar moves, and of course, the Rays always do that sort of thing. So, in all honesty, they could very well win the division or be a wild card team again, but I just don't have as much faith in it. The lineup is solid, but it's not outstanding. So, that's why I have them in third place. And of course, the bullpen is still really solid. But ultimately, it all has to come together, and I just don't know if they can do that again this year. In second, I have the Toronto Blue Jays at 91 and 71. I really like the Blue Jays, probably overrating them, like a lot of people might, but their offense is incredible. Obviously, they picked up George Springer, and they already have a number of other guys who can produce at the plate. What it comes down to, and their success, similar to the Red Sox a little bit, is the pitching really has to hit. They missed out on some free agents this year, which I think that's tough for them, but they still have Ryu and some other guys up there. Hopefully Nate Pearson can have an outbreak season this year. So we'll see what happens on the pitching side of things, but that offense is definitely good enough to carry them to the wild card. And of course, in first place, we have the Yankees. I hate to say it, but the Yankees are just really good. They really are. I really liked their offseason. Getting Jameson Taillon, Corey Kluber. Yeah, they're slightly a little bit risky coming off injuries, but both those guys are proven starters that if they are healthy, will transform that rotation. Hopefully they can get Luis Severino back at some point. Jordan Montgomery looks pretty solid, and then of course you got Garrett Cole. And then Devi Garcia waiting in the wings, among others. Domingo Germán is still around. Their pitching is really solid. The bullpen, I haven't looked too much into their bullpen, but I think their bullpen is still pretty solid. They really only lost Adam Ottavino. And of course, the lineup is crazy good. They made some under-the-radar moves, picking up guys like Jay Bruce and Derek Dietrich for bench bats potentially. Obviously, that lineup is pretty right-handed heavy, but if guys can stay healthy, I mean, that's the thing with every team, but especially the Yankees have had injury problems the past few years, especially with Aaron Judge. So if guys can stay healthy, this is a first-place team and a potential World Series contender. Moving to the AL Central. Got the Tigers in fifth place. at 66 and 96. Honestly, regardless of the Astros scandal, I think AJ Hinch was a good coach, and so it'll be interesting to see how he does there. They brought in some veteran guys for the roster. You've still got Miguel Cabrera. Casey Mize hopefully can continue to develop and become the top prospect that he was and produce at the major league level. The Tigers are also trending in the right direction, but they're just not there yet. The rebuilding effort looks like it's going well, but it's not there yet, and we'll really know if they've turned the corner the next year or two after this season. This year, it's just not it yet. The Royals are just slightly ahead of the Tigers at this point. I'm excited to see Bobby Witt come up. He's probably going to play second since they have Mondesi at short. But the Royals could be good, like the Mariners, who I'll talk about in a minute. The Royals have potential to be a wild card team, but they probably won't, if that makes sense. Like they won't be a wild card team, but if things go well, similar to the Red Sox as well, they could sneak in there. I have them at 77-85. I think that's definitely a fair estimate. What worries me more, the offense seems fine. Like you brought in Carlos Santana, you signed Hunter Dozier to an extension. Bobby Witt potentially coming up. Salvi Perez is still there. Mondesi, bringing in Benintendi. The lineup should be pretty solid. Obviously, you still got Whit Merrifield. But it's more a question about the pitching. They brought in Mike Minor. They still have Brady Singer and Brad Keller. But ultimately, I just don't know if it's enough. And the bullpen's not crazy amazing either. But we'll see what happens with the Royals. But they're definitely trending in the right direction as well. The Indians, like the Rays, I think are trending downward. I still think they could even be better than what I have them at 82 and 80 because you've got Shane Bieber, Aaron Savale, and others in that rotation. But at this point, Carlos Carrasco was traded, Francisco Lindor was traded as well in that deal. So the rotation's still solid, but it's just not what it used to be. And I don't know if Bieber can carry that whole rotation. The bullpen, they lost Brad Hand. James Karinchak is really the guy there at this point. And the lineup just doesn't look quite as good to me. Yeah, they had a decent return in the Francisco Lindor trade, but ultimately I just don't think it's enough for them right now. And I think it might be smart for them to potentially go into a rebuilding mode if they don't live up to expectations this season. I'm not high on them, but some people still are. But I think this is kind of the last year for the Indians if they can't turn the corner. You've got Nolan Jones coming up. Obviously, you still have Jose Ramirez, but it takes more than a couple of superstars in Ramirez and Bieber, so a lot of the other guys have to step up. I have the White Sox in second at 92 and 70. I'm not a fan of the White Sox, but I like what they're doing. I haven't been a fan of the White Sox since that 2005 World Series, and I'm also a bit of a Twins fan. It's one of the only other teams that I root for besides the Mariners. I honestly don't really agree with the move of getting Tony La Russa. Seems weird to me, but that lineup is potent, and they made some good moves on the pitching end, getting Lance Lynn. You still got Lucas Giolito, of course, Dallas Keuchel. It's a solid rotation. They got Liam Hendricks for the bullpen. The White Sox are going to be dangerous, and they could win the division. Next, talking about the Twins. Honestly, I'm maybe a little bit too high on the Twins, but that's probably because I'm a fan of the Twins besides the Mariners. I have them at 93 and 69, but they could potentially be a third place team or second place team that misses out on the wild card. The lineup is obviously really good, but some guys struggled last year who performed well the previous year. Mitch Garver needs to come back. Max Kepler needs to step it up. Jorge Polanco needs to get back to form. Like, all these guys need to step it up. They made some good moves with Andrelton Simmons, bringing back Cruz, but the pitching has been the problem, and I still am not sold on that rotation. I think the Twins can still win the division. I just don't know if they will, but I like the Twins, so we're going to put them there. All right, guys. This has been a long one, but last division to talk about. In fifth, we've got the Rangers at 67 and 95. I think the Rangers are really bad. I don't care what moves they made this offseason. They need to rebuild, and I think you started to see that with the trade of Lance Lynn, but I think Gallo needs to be traded. Obviously, he didn't have an amazing year last year, but if he's doing well at the deadline, you've got to trade him. You really have to. He can bring back a lot. I feel like the Yankees would pay handsomely for Joey Gallo potentially. Any team really would. Gallo's a great talent. He's a good defender as well as a good hitter. Had a little bit of a down year hitting last year, but there's so much power in that bat. Anyways, I won't talk too much about the Rangers. I don't think they're going to be good. I wasn't a fan of the moves they made this offseason very much. So I have them in last place. In fourth, I have the Seattle Mariners at 76 and 86. Now, do I want to predict them to make the playoffs? Yes, I really do. Do I think they're there yet? Potentially, but no. This team could sneak into the wild card. this team could surprise people if things go their way. But Haniger's got to stay healthy for the full season. James Paxton has to stay healthy for a full season. Just the rotation, bullpen, lineup, all of it needs to hit right for us to make the playoffs this year. I think the Mariners are more shooting for 2022 as the year for contention, and I think that's the right move. I would like to see them in the playoffs, and it's possible this year, but not likely. But we'll see. I like the team, and I'll talk about them more in depth when I do my preseason review of the team and kind of go through their lineup and rotation and stuff, so I won't talk about them too much. I have the Mariners at 76 and 86 and fourth, but they could move up. Next, we have the A's. I think the A's are going to drop off. They just lost too many key pieces for me. Marcus Semien going to the Blue Jays is a lot better than getting Andrus from the Rangers. Trevor Rosenthal is a good pickup, but not as good as Liam Hendry. Like, the moves they made were fine, and they were very Oakland A-esque or Tampa Bay Ray-esque, where they fill in spots with guys and it just somehow works. But I just don't really believe in the A's. That rotation is really good, but the offense is like, I mean, you got Matt Chapman, Mark Canha, Matt Olson, but Matt Olson didn't have an amazing year at the plate last year, and the offense really has to stay strong if they are going to continue and repeat as division champions. In second place, I have the Los Angeles Angels. Honestly, if their pitching sucks, they're going to be worse than the Mariners, straight up. But if their pitching is good, they could win the division because that lineup is scary good. Trout, Rendon, Ohtani, Jared Walsh is starting to break out. Potentially Joe Adell. I'm not really concerned about Dexter Fowler, but he's still pretty good. You got Justin Upton, Albert Pujols, David Fletcher. It's a pretty good lineup. A couple of older guys there in Upton, Fowler, and Pujols, but they're still productive hitters. What concerns me most about the Angels is their defense, since they do have some older guys, and the pitching, of course. They didn't make too many moves out there. I'm not sold by the Alex Cobb move or the Jose Quintana move. Raisel Iglesias was a great move, but then they didn't really do anything else for the bullpen, so we'll see what happens. Lastly, we've got the Houston Astros in first place at 94 and 68. Now, do I want the Astros to win the division? No. Do I think they will? Yes. Do I think someone else can win the division? Yes, but it's going to take a lot. And the Astros lineup is just too good. They're getting Yordan Alvarez back. They brought Brantley back. They still have Bregman. Altuve's probably going to bounce back. And the rotation is not bad. You still got Greinke. Unfortunately for them, Framber Valdez broke his finger, so he's going to be out for a little bit. Justin Verlander's still out with Tommy John. But you had Christian Vasquez, who pitched pretty well as a rookie. You've still got Lance McCullers, Greinke, as I mentioned. And, it's still a good rotation, and the bullpen's still pretty good. So I still think the Astros are going to win the division. I don't really want them to. I actually think 94 wins is probably their ceiling. They might even not even win that much, but we'll see what happens. So there you have it, guys. Those are my predictions for the 2021 season as far as divisions and how well I think teams will do. I think this is going to be a fun year of baseball. Dodgers-Padres is going to be fun to watch. Twins-White Sox will be fun to watch. Yankees-Blue Jays will be fun to watch. The NL Central will be interesting, minus the Pirates. The NL East will be really competitive, probably the most competitive division. So it's going to be a fun year. I'm really excited for this season, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. So like, subscribe, comment below your thoughts on my predictions and some of your own predictions. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Mariners Fanatic, out.